Hello everybody, this is TipTopMTG here today with another Magic the Gathering video. In today's video, we are doing something a little bit new, but a little bit old. We are going to be looking at the top 10 most expensive variants in Strixhaven. For those of you who don't know, Strixhaven just came out in paper, and with it comes a whole bunch of variants of the normal cards. Cards with stretch borders, cards with borderless art, cards with new art, and these often go for a higher price. So while I did a video covering the top 10 most expensive mystical archives and the top 10 most expensive cards, in this video we will simply be talking about the top 10 most expensive premium or, stylized cards from the set. This is something I did a little while back with Ikoria, and I stopped it. But if you've noticed on my channel, I've been trying to upload more content, and I thought this could be a fun thing to revisit. Now that we've had these borderless and extended arts for so long, it will be interesting to see. So why don't we just jump straight into this? And I say that, but I do need to give a couple disclaimers. First off, these prices are what they are as of the time of filming this. This video does not magically update for when you watch it. So if you're watching this way in the future, prices have probably either gone down or up. It's very unlikely to stay at the exact same price. Similarly, these cards are all priced in USD and also from Card Kingdom. So you can probably find these cards for cheaper, but I use Card Kingdom as a baseline for every set I do. So yeah, I think that is it. The main purpose of this video is so that if you open up some of these, you can kind of know what their general price is at. And I'm going to talk about why I think every card is valued where it's at, and just talk about the cards in general. So why don't we just jump right into this? Starting off, we have Rowan, Scholar of Sparks. It is a 3-cost red legendary planeswalker Rowan, 2 loyalty, and it says instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. You can +1 her, and she deals 1 damage to each opponent, but if you've drawn 3 or more cards this turn, instead she deals 3 damage to each opponent. Then you can -4 and you get an emblem with, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you may pay 2. If you do copy that spell, you may choose new targets for the copy. So it's one of those 3-mana walkers that isn't necessarily going to warp the entire game around it, but can generate you a lot of value, and while that emblem isn't game ending, it is a ton of value. But that's not it. Rowan is a double-faced card, and on the back we have Will, Scholar of Frost. He's a 5-cost blue legendary planeswalker Will, 4 loyalty, and it says instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. It has a +1 that says up to 1 target creature has base power and toughness 0-2 until your next turn, -3 draw 2 cards, and -7 exile up to 5 target permanents. For each permanent exiled this way, its controller creates a 4/4 blue and red elemental creature token. Alright, so this is going for about $15, which is pretty significantly higher than their non-borderless version. Looking back, maybe I should have compared it to the non-borderless version. That could have been kind of interesting. Maybe for Adventures in the Forgotten Realm, that's what I'll do. But I do want to say a big part of this being in the top 10 list is that it is a planeswalker. When it comes to pre-order prices or prices near launch, planeswalkers are the hardest to judge, in my opinion, of how much of an impact they'll see. On top of that, the borderless cards, which are reserved for planeswalkers, and the elder dragons have new art. This is not just a stretched version of the normal art. This is brand new art, which inherently brings up the value. However, what you also have to realize is that the borderless cards also appear in non-collector boosters. So I don't know which one of those really takes priority. The fact that you could open a Will Scholar Frost in a normal booster, or the fact that he has new art. But either way, it's enough to keep him in the top 10, I guess him and her, in the top 10 most expensive cards. But keep that in mind, this is something that can be opened up in draft boosters. And I feel like because it's a planeswalker, it is sticking up here just a little bit more. Speaking of planeswalkers, well, not exactly a planeswalker, but Mila, Crafty Companion, is 1 white for a legendary creature Fox 2/3, and it says whenever an opponent attacks 1 or more planeswalkers you control, put a loyalty counter on each planeswalker you control. And then whenever a permanent you control becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, you may draw a card. So, pretty good card, but the reason that this is even on the list and why it's borderless and not extended, meaning it has new art, normal Mila does not look like this, is because on the back we have Luca, Wayward Bonder. 6-cost red legendary planeswalker Luca, 5 loyalty. You can +1 him to discard a card, and if you do, you draw a card, and if you discarded a creature card, you draw 2 cards instead. Pretty cool. -2, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste, exile it at the beginning of your next upkeep. Then you can -7, when you get an emblem with, whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. So pretty good. I actually think the two cards almost contradict each other. One wants lots of planeswalkers, one wants lots of creatures. But take everything I said about Will and Rowan, with it being a planeswalker, meaning it's a little bit harder to judge. It's also borderless, meaning it has brand new art, but it also means you can open it in a booster pack. But what I think makes this one interesting, although it is the same price, is the fact that this can be your commander. Why? Because Luca's on the back. And that is the main reason Luca is on the back here. If you're wondering why it's, Luca, you would feel like Mila would be the back card. It's like Luca and his companion, but it's his companion and Luca, which is a little bit weird. But the reason they do that is because this allows him to be played as a commander, because the front side is a legendary creature. So if you were wondering why they did that, that is almost 100% the reason why it is this way. It's because they don't print the words, "this card can be your commander." And what I always say is that the variants of commanders are always going to be more expensive, because it is the card people are more likely to pay extra money to bling out. Why? Because it's the card you're going to see every game. It probably sits on the table before anything else, and everyone's going to have to look at it. So it's one of those cards that I feel like a lot more people are fine investing a little bit more money into. So it kind of surprises me Luca isn't above Rowan, especially with the front side, Mila being such an awesome card with like the value of whenever your stuff gets targeted, draw a card, and being awesome in planeswalker decks as well. Both being able to be a creature, but if you don't want creatures because you have like anti-creature effects, you can also then play it as Luca. So I feel like this is one of the ones where I disagree. I feel like this should be slightly higher priced than Rowan and Will, but they're both fine cards. Next, we have Harness Infinity, another $15 card. It is just extended this time. So for instance, it is the same art as the non-special version, but just stretched a little bit. And actually, this is one of the first sets, or I think Kaldheim was, where the art is no longer being stretched, it's just bigger art. When they started doing this, at first it was just stretching all the art. And a big reason for that is probably they had all the art done, so they're like, well, we can't request bigger images. But now that we've done this for a while, they are starting to get bigger images, is what it seems like, so that it's, the normal card is actually just a cropped version of the extended, which I think works a lot better, but I can't promise that for all cards. Either way, pretty awesome card that can do a lot of nonsense. It can just refill your hand. It basically resurrects everything in your graveyard into your hand, or recurs it back into your hand, and that's pretty good. It is very mana intensive in terms of having the right colors. I see this being a big thing in something like Commander, where you can do some pretty crazy stuff with this. It just feels like one of those big cards. It also looks amazing, which helps it when it's a variant. Stretching out this art, it almost like connects with the golden border when it's extended, and it looks really awesome. So I think even just art alone, I think that boosts up a little bit. And then the fact that this is a card that has such a big wow factor is pretty good. Either way, let's speed up this a little bit. We have Exodus Orique Overlord, $16, so we're going up $1. It's a 2/4 with double strike, and whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, return target non-legendary creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So again, we're getting this stretched art, and if I'm not mistaken, it looks like the text box is a little bit smaller, meaning the art is even bigger, although that could just be some weird trick with it being like legendary and it looks a little bit bigger. Either way, it also has a backside, which is Awaken the Blood avatar, which is an expensive spell that gets cheaper by sacking creatures, and then it creates a 3/6 black and red avatar, and whenever that avatar attacks, it deals 3 damage to each opponent. Either way, this is not only a commander, which again I said increases the price, but it also is a 3-color commander, which increases the price, and it's a very powerful one at that, in a strategy that has lots of support. So yeah, that's definitely what puts it up here. It's also a mythic, and it just has a lot of value to it. It is a card that is inherently good. Both sides kind of want to do the same thing, which isn't necessarily what's happening in this set a lot, so I think it gives it a little bit of an edge over other cards. Next, we have Wandering Archaic. It's a 5-cost colorless creature avatar, 4/4, and it says whenever an opponent casts an instant or sorcery spell, they may pay 2. If they don't, you may copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. This card is honestly insane, and it can generate you so much value, even if everyone always pays 2. This is a 4/4 for 5 in any color that says instants and sorceries your opponent's cast cost 2 more. And that means, by the way, if they use a removal spell on this, it's going to cost 2 more to do. So you almost always get at least a little bit of value. But then there's always those players, especially in a multiplayer game, where they're like, well, I really want to do this. but I don't want to let him get a copy. Well, whatever. And so it ends up doing a lot of value. And the fact that it can go into any deck is what makes it so potent. But what if your opponents aren't playing instants and sorceries, or you don't need this, or, whatever? It's also a modal double face card. So as awesome as that card is, it also is Explore the Vast Lands, which lets each player look at the top 5 cards of their library and reveal a land and or instant or sorcery from among them and put them into their hand, and then each player gains 3 life. So it's a group hug kind of effect, but like, say you have this in your hand, and you're like, well, I can't cast the other side, I'm being mana screwed, I'm gonna miss my land drop. This is a like nice backup option. So very powerful card, and it can go in a lot of decks, which is probably propping up the price here. If this was in any color, instantly would be off this list, but because it's colorless, it means every single color can get access to it. Next, we have Kazmina Enigma Sage, 3 cost Simic, or I guess Quandrix, legendary planeswalker Kazmina, 2 loyalty. Each other planeswalker you control has the abilities of Kazmina. You can +2 her to scry 1. You can -X to create a 0/0 green and blue fractal creature token with X +1/+1 counters on it. And you can -8 to search your library for an instant or sorcery card that shares a color with this planeswalker. Exile that card, then shuffle. You may cast it without paying its mana cost. Very awesome planeswalker. Why? Because it's not Luca, where it's like +1, maybe discard and draw some cards, minus ability, it's removal, although it's actually a little bit more recursion. Or I guess Will is almost a good example. +1, protect yourself, minus ability, card advantage, ultimate, do something pretty big. This is one that it has an ultimate, it's not, it is pretty good in older formats, but in something like Standard and Historic, it doesn't do too much. And it's just interesting. It's a planeswalker that plays differently. I did a poll where I talked about like what if people liked static abilities on planeswalkers, and a big majority of people said they liked them, or more specifically, they liked them when they synergize with the card and aren't a random ability. A random ability would be like Rowan. Instants and sorceries you cast cost 1 less to cast. Fine, but Kazmina here has a passive ability that just makes her play differently. It makes her not play like other planeswalkers, and therefore is more interesting. At number 4, we have Giazi, also coming in at $20. This is an 8 cost blue legendary creature, human wizard, 5/5, and when you can discard a card to return it to your hand, which is pretty good because if you're paying 8 mana, then this just gets instantly removed. You're down 8 mana, probably a turn and a creature. Either way, it has Magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, essentially you reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land, you put it on the battlefield. If it's a non-land, you can pay 1 to cast it. And then that's basically how the card works. And what's interesting is if it's an instant or sorcery off the top, it triggers Magecraft again, meaning say you cast a 1-drop instant or sorcery and your deck is pretty much all instants and sorceries, it's very possible that for every 1 mana you have, you're casting another spell. So pretty good value. But it also has a backside, which is Journey to the Oracle. You may put any number of land cards from your hand onto the battlefield. Then if you control 8 or more lands, you may discard a card. If you do, return Journey to the Oracle to its owner's hand. So you could ramp yourself up to this giant 8-drop, and then using the 8-drop, and then the card comes back to you to recast. Pretty awesome. I like boomerang style modal double face cards where like the backside helps you get to the front side, like Alrind from Kaldheim. His little hawk can get bounced back to your hand and preps you to play Alrind. This is very similar. Journey to the Oracle, put a bunch of lands into play. That's enough to now cast your commander, and the card comes back to you. And again, going for $20. Next, we have Galazith Prismari. This one is one of those ones where it's a commander, it is borderless, it has new art, and it's a really good card, so that is of course contributing to the fact that it is going for $25. It is a 4-cost blue and red legendary creature Elder Dragon, 3/4 with flying, and when it enters the battlefield you get a treasure. And then it lets artifacts you control tap to add 1 mana of any color, but you can only use this mana to cast instants and sorcery. So it kind of lets your treasure tokens be permanent lands for casting instants and sorceries, which is really, really powerful. Note you do need to tap treasures to sacrifice them, so you can't tap a treasure for mana and then sack it for mana. Just a note when you're playing the card. But yeah, like I said earlier, it is a commander. It is going to be a popular commander. It has alternate art and it's borderless. It is just the perfect combination for a expensive card, and therefore it is up here. The borderless style looks pretty good, and also what they did interestingly with the Elder Dragons, at least what I noticed, is that All the other dragons are kind of wide shots, or not wide shots, but you can see like the whole dragon and part of like the campus, and you get the idea of, oh, this is the Prismari kind of campus with the dragon on it, versus the borderless cards are all about the big dragon. So I think the fact that the dragons have such like close-up personal borderless cards while they're kind of far back, more scenery-based normal cards means that these can go for a lot more, and you'll notice that with a couple other cards too. Next, we have Professor Onyx. Again, everything I said about Planeswalkers applies here, except this one is one of the most expensive cards in the set. Normally, that means when it gets translated into a variant, it's just going to be one of the more expensive variants. It is a 6-cost legendary planeswalker that is going to drain 2 from each opponent whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, cast or copy, I should say. And then her +1 is going to gain you some card advantage by letting you look at the top 3 cards of your library, putting one of them into your hand and then the rest into your graveyard, and then you also lose a life. She also has removal on her -3, which makes each opponent sacrifice the creature they control with the greatest power. And then her -8 basically says your opponents discard 7 cards, up to 7 cards. For each card they don't discard, they lose 3 life, and they can choose not to discard. So kind of, that's like my simple way of explaining it. Essentially, you get 7 triggers of, hey, discard a card or lose 3 life. So yeah, pretty good card. Again, it has alternate art, raising up the price. And it also is very different art. Like some of the, borderless ones aren't that different, but this is a lot different. The other one's her sitting down in like a neutral pose. This is more action oriented, and I think that when the variant and the normal version can be different, it's a good thing because then it gives you more options. And number 1 is Belladore's Witherbloom. I don't know if this was a surprise to anyone who saw the other video, but he is one of the most expensive cards in the set. He's a 7-drop. Again, what I said about borderless cards applies here. What I said about commanders apply here. And what I said about the Elder Dragons being all close-ups applies here as well. When you look at Belladore's Witherbloom, you really don't get any real details about him from his big art, but this is really close and a more detailed look, which I think is interesting. Either way, he's a 7-cost black and green 4/4 with flying. At the beginning of each upkeep, including your opponents, create a 1/1 black and green pest creature token with. When this creature dies, you gain 1 life. And then you can pay 10 life and untap all lands you control. You can only do this once per turn. So pretty powerful. He's going for $35, which is a pretty good, incentive. If I'm not mistaken, you can pull this from a draft booster. It is technically available in foil. I don't know if that's in draft boosters. They've made this so convoluted, it's impossible to keep up with it. Very, very popular. I would have included the foil prices for all these, but I could not find them. So we'll just kind of have to wait and see on that. Either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. If you enjoyed, hit that like button and subscribe to see more content like this. Also, let me know what you think about the top 10 most expensive variants. Do you think it's unnecessary? I've been trying to do more content on my channel, and I'm trying to see what I can add into what I'm already doing, and I thought this could be an interesting opportunity. Either way, see you guys in the next one.